I have served in the Marine Corps for 14 years, and I have learned many things about our doctrine, our philosophies when it comes to warfighting. And in my own journey through life, I have engaged in spiritual warfare just like you. And in this video, what I want to do is show you the parallels, the relationship, the close connection between Marine Corps warfighting principles and the spiritual war that we are in. How they align, how closely they intersect. Because I am telling you that there are some really important lessons and things we can take away from human warfare strategy and apply it to combating evil in our spiritual war. And any Marine will tell you the most important document, the most important book, the most important signed reading that they will ever do is reading this book, this doctrine right here. This is Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 1, Warfighting. This book outlines the nature, philosophy, and principles of war by which the Marine Corps has built its strategic military plans and operations from. Our tactics are derived from this. This is the foundation by which all of our plans are built. And there are things that are said in this book that closely align with Scripture, believe it or not. And I'm going to get to that here, but let me just read directly from MCDP 1. This is from the preface here. It states, "War is both timeless and ever-changing. While the basic nature of war is constant, the means and methods we use evolve continuously. Like war itself, our approach to warfighting must evolve." So what we're saying here, what the Marine Corps has said, is that war is timeless, meaning it is not bound by time. Wait a minute. But we are, as humans, we are restricted by time. Are we not? No, we're not. We have a soul, which is eternal. The Marine Corps didn't even realize it acknowledged the eternity of man. It basically said there was an ongoing eternal war. It is timeless and ever-changing. The reason we struggle spiritually, the reason we don't understand the spiritual realm, the reason we don't understand the conflict that we're facing with evil right now is because we are allowing the boundaries of our time to frame how we combat or lack thereof. But Satan, the evil one, on the other hand, has been operating and will operate for eternity. He is not bound by human time. He is an angelic and powerful being that has been able to, as it says here, the means and methods have evolved for him over the centuries, over time. So think about how much of an advantage he has over us, just given the fact that he has had all of this time to construct his battle strategy, his strategic approach, his goals, whatever that might mean for a dark, evil being that will live on forever. One of the things that I want to share with you is Chapter 1, The Nature of War. Now bear with me because I'm going to read directly from the book. And I'm not going to go too long, but you need to listen to this because this is how the Marine Corps further defines war in a very human way. Because we can't understand the spiritual war if we don't first get the very, very basic first principles of what war even is on a very basic human level. So this is how the Marine Corps defines war in MCDP 1. It says, war is a violent clash of interests between or among organized groups characterized by the use of military force. And it goes on to say, the essence of war is a violent struggle between two hostile, independent, irreconcilable wills. each trying to impose itself on the other. War is fundamentally an interactive social process. And it says Clausewitz, who is a very famous Prussian general from the 17 and 1800s, who was a philosopher of war, he was a famous tactician, and he studied the nature of war. And he literally equates it to a two-way struggle and suggested in his own way the image of a pair of wrestlers locked in a hold, each exerting force and counterforce to try to throw the other. War is thus a process of continuous mutual adaptation, of give and take, move and countermove. And it is critical to keep in mind that the enemy is not an inanimate object to be acted upon, but an independent and animate force with its own objectives and plans. While we try to impose our will on the enemy, he resists and seeks to impose his own will on us. Appreciating this dynamic interplay between opposing human wills is essential to understanding the fundamental nature of war. The object in war is to impose our will on the enemy. The means to this end is the organized application or threat of violence by military force. The target of that violence may be limited to hostile combatant forces, or it may extend to the enemy population at large. Now listen, war may range from intense clashes between large military forces, sometimes backed by an official declaration of war, or to subtler, unconventional hostilities that barely reach the threshold of violence. So, the Marine Corps has acknowledged, one, that war is timeless, aka it's spiritual, it's eternal, it's everlasting. Two, it's a clash of wills between two irreconcilable wills. Three, it can be a gnarly clash of two big forces, or it can be subtle, unconventional, and barely reach violence. So the first thing I want to point out here is MCDP 1 said that it is not just a mere physical contest, not a mere physical clash of wills. It could also be subtle. It could also be non-physical. And this concept echoes very closely to what Scripture says about warfare and the physical realm and the flesh. And this is from Ephesians 6:12. For our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of the world of this darkness, against the spirits of wickedness in the high places. So understand that even though we picture two wrestlers giving and taking and using force, and even though it is a two-way road, it's two opposing wills, it isn't always physical. Number two, in MCDP 1, it also states later on in page 40, it says, deception is essential in war. We should attempt to mislead our adversaries. And John 8:44 says about Satan, he says this, he says, he was a murderer from the beginning, and he stood not in the truth, because truth is not in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father thereof. So, we know from a very human perspective that we conduct warfare leveraging deception to our advantage to win over our adversaries. John says in Scripture that Satan uses the same tactic. He is using the same thing. He's doing the same thing. So we know that deception isn't just a human thing in warfare. It's not just a human advantage. It's not just a human principle when it comes to combating an opposing force. It is also from evil. An evil eternal being that is trying to destroy us is also leveraging that same thing, is also trying to use deceit to win. Now, I say all this, and I sort of connected the nature of war as it pertains to what war fighting says and Scripture. And what does this all mean? Like, what is the message here? And the key takeaway for you is, one, understanding that we can learn a lot by studying human warfare, by studying documents like war fighting, like other great writers and other great people who know and understand the very deep nature and philosophy of war, how we can take those principles and apply them to our own spiritual combat. What does it mean to be like spiritually prepared? MCDP 1 says, preparation for war is a continuous process of education, training, and character development. And as my time in the Marine Corps has gone on, I have spent a considerable amount of time training. And anyone who served in the military and prepared for war can tell you the same. You're constantly training, you're constantly improving, you're constantly getting reps in, you're constantly iterating, you're constantly doing things and going back to the drawing board and correcting them and doing them again in your rehearsals, and you're doing combat checks and combat preparation, and it's a continuous cycle of getting stronger and better at the basics. At the basics. It's always the basics. That's always what we need to focus on. That's always where we need to be. People want to do these crazy strategic plans. They want to do all of these really robust, incredible things with their men and their units, and they want to, come up with something new. But in reality, what we really need to do is stay true to the basic principles that have been tried and true and have been learned through literal flesh and blood by the sacrifices of people who've gone there, tried that, and died. So in the Christian realm, we can look at the martyrs and those who have put their faith to the test and went to the very end and gave their life for Christ and his church. For our battlefield warriors who we've lost in combat, who died while carrying out plans and strategies and operations, we have learned from their sacrifice important lessons. So we don't need to deviate from anything. All we need to do is follow what has been laid before us as the path, as the true way forward. St. Paul says in Ephesians 6:11, "Put you on the armor of God that you may be able to stand against the deceits of the devil." So what does that mean? So MCDP 1 says educate, train, character development, prep. St. Paul says put on the armor of God. Well, what does the armor of God mean? Well, the armor of God is prayer. It's the rosary. It's receiving the sacraments. It's going to confession. It's receiving Holy Communion. It is spiritual reading, studying Scripture, and using those things. That is your preparation. That is your way of getting better. That is your training. And MCDP 1 says, again, success in war depends on the ability to recognize and exploit fleeting opportunities. And Christ says, be ready, be watchful, because you know not the day nor the hour. So, if we're a military force and we're not training, we're not educating, we're not getting better, we're not practicing, and that hour comes when the enemy exploits, sees an opportunity, comes at us, we are screwed. We're all going to die. And in our spiritual life, if we are not praying, if we are not reading Scripture, if we are not doing the right things in our lives, if we are falling into vices, if we are falling into a lazy routine, if we are allowing Satan to sort of normalize small sins, and he kind of has an ability to embed within our lifestyle and introduces weaknesses into our routine and into our character, into our nature, into the things that we do. And that will happen if we aren't spiritually ready, if we aren't spiritually vigilant. So I hope this video gives you insight on how the human understanding of warfare directly applies to Scripture and the spiritual war that we are fighting. So stay vigilant, be strong, pray always, and God be with you.